Tonight, La Quinta. Tomorrow, you shine. I'm Buster Olney, working for my hotel in Boston, where on Thursday night we did the broadcast between the Rays and the Red Sox. Today, we'll be talking with Alex Anthopoulos, the head of baseball operations with the Braves. Yankee superfan Rich Eisen joins us with some John Sterling memories and his story about how he creeped out a childhood hero. And we hear from Sarah Langs and Todd Radin. But first, what's going on with the Chicago Cubs right now is absolutely insane. They were playing the Cincinnati Reds in Wrigley Field on Wednesday night, bottom of the ninth inning. There was one base runner on, one out, and Pete Crow Armstrong came to the plate.
On the pitch, swinging a drive, left center field, pretty deep, back toward the wall. That ball is gone! That ball is gone! It's a tie game! Can you believe it? Pete Crow Armstrong, an opposite alley home run. This ball game is back to even, tied at 6.
And then in the 10th inning, this is how it ended.
And the pitch on the way. Inside, Cubs win the ball game. The Cubs have won another one. Listen to this crowd.
3 straight walk-off wins in the series against Cincinnati. Wow.
And I can't think of a team right now that fits its home ballpark better. The way their everyday position players are with the great defense, the great everyday lineup. They've been able to overcome some of the early season injuries they've had with their pitching staff. By the way, that news only got worse on Wednesday. Craig Counsell, their manager, announced that Matthew Boyd is out because he needs meniscus surgery. It's an injury that happened actually when he was playing with his kids. Alex Anthopoulos is the head of baseball operations for the Atlanta Braves, of course, off to a phenomenal start in the National League East. Alex, how you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. So I'm curious about how you process something like this with you guys playing this well. Do you take it at face value? Do you, or are you kind of a little reserved about your response to it, just naturally having so much experience?
Totally great question. And he's a little reserved. I'd love to be a little reserved. It's, I'd say it's, I got PTSD from last year. So, and I know how long the season is. And even if we were scuffling, I tell you it's early. And look, we've been that team that's been down 8 games back of the division, have come back, have been under 500 in August, win the World Series. So look, I was talking to Chipper Jones in spring training. We were talking about a roster move or something. And I was like, it's only the first few weeks of the season. Who's going to remember that? He goes, well, I remember 0-7. And that's what happened to us last year. So it beats 0-7. And we're playing well. It's good to see. The fact that we bounce back after some tough losses and so on is encouraging. It looks sustainable. It feels sustainable. But we've had, the bullpen's been strong. The rotation's done a nice job. And offensively, even though we don't have everybody firing on all cylinders, we have some guys having some big years. So again, though, still early, so much time to go. Have to stay healthy, keep our foot on the gas. And it's definitely nice to get off to a good start.
Matt Olson is off to an unbelievable start. It feels like it's, for me anyway, it's the best I've seen him on an extended run here. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I'd say just the fact he's hitting for the average he is, right? We know he's a great power hitter, on base skills, best defensive first baseman I've ever seen in my life. Not that I'm that old, but I feel like I've been around long enough now. I'm 48. So I haven't seen anybody, just in terms of the defensive side of the ball, throwing, the ability to pick balls, the ability to stretch and bang plays and really make a difference there. But, the average as well, he's using the whole field, and he's always been capable of doing that. We've seen him hit home runs to the opposite field and so on, but just the hit tool has really come on this past year, and that's maybe just a credit to more time in the league and so on, starting to mature. But I agree with you. He could have easily in any other year won the MVP in 2023. I think was 4th that year, which was crazy how good all 4 guys were. Mookie, Freddie, Ronald, who won it, and him. But to me, he's playing at that stage right now, that level right now. And the average is probably what jumps out the most.
And I've noticed that some of your fans have commented on this on social media. It feels like this year we're seeing more emotion from Matt. And I don't know if it's because he's off to a hot start or maybe because he had big moments. I'm curious if you see the same thing, because, of course, Matt's reputation is someone who even keel all the way through. You know, the guy shows up, plays every single game, and his emotions don't seem to waver that much.
Definitely. Look, he's a humble, self-effacing guy. I've seen that actually from a bunch of our players. In big moments, he's hit some big home runs. Mike Harris, same thing. Very quiet, very reserved, humble, almost shy. Seen emotion out of him when he gets some big hits. So, he's the same person to me, but you're right. On the field, we've seen more emotion than we have in the past in some big spots, big moments, and so on. Again, I don't want to speak for him, but I think last year was so tough on so many of us, right? The standard that's been built here way before I got here, right? From John Sherholtz, Bobby Cox, the years and years and years, Stan Kasten obviously as well, and just a winning every single year. And even when I joined the Braves, you felt it, right? The Hall of Famers, the pressure, and so on to win. And we were really fortunate to make the postseason 7 years in a row. And then last year you finished under 500 and things just didn't go well. Whatever the reasons were, the injuries and so on, we didn't get the job done. So I think our players definitely felt that, the level of passion, the expectation from the fans. So, from my standpoint, it feels good to be able to turn it around again and be back to what people expect, especially for this community and for the South.
Tell me how you processed that brawl that happened out in Anaheim when you see your manager, Walt Weiss, your first year managing for you, putting his head down and taking down Jorge Soler. First off, where were you when you saw that, and sort of what was your thought process as you're seeing it? Because it certainly is unusual.
Yeah, I know. I mean, so I was at home, so I was watching at home. I wasn't on the road in Anaheim. And I gotta tell you, to this day, other than talking through the suspensions, never talked to him about it. Not because I'm
You're
shying away
kidding.
from it. It's kind of crazy, right? You'd think I would have texted him right after, called him right after, been like, "Oh wow," have all kinds of commentary. And this, I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but I'm not surprised. And I don't mean that in the way of just that's who he is, him doing the right thing. It was not scripted, premeditated. It was the right thing to do. I mean, not everyone can do it. Not everyone would have the guts to do it. But look, I've been around him now. This is year 9. I've seen things over the 8 years where if he has to do the right thing, he's going to do it, And look, to me, it diffused it. It ended it, and no one got hurt. I understand it was a story, and everyone pointed to his age. I got to tell you, I never even when I'm going through when we hired him, some things came up about his age. I never looked at Walt's age. I didn't know what his age was. It didn't matter, to me. And Dana Brown used to always talk about, our former VP of scouting. You talk about age in the draft room. You say age is body related, and you look at Walt. I mean, he's a young guy, the energy and everything else, and he takes care of himself. So, look, I think it was a good moment for him. That wasn't the plan. But your new manager, in terms of, in this organization as a manager, you've been the bench coach and so on. I think it worked out. I mean, he already had player buy-in. I knew that well prior to. But look, I think it's tough. You're following, Brian Snitker didn't immediately follow Bobby Cox. Freddie Gonzalez was before him, but still big shoes to fill there. Brian Snitker, with all the success he had, you're following him. I never believe, it's one thing I saw when I was in LA when Joe Davis took over for Vin Scully, and it really struck me the way he talked about it. He said, "I'm not replacing anybody. I'm following. I'm next." And I feel that way, whether it's great players that have left and we've had to fill spots, whether it's guys like Walt having to come in for Snit and so on. So I think if anything, Walt is so self-effacing the same way, really humble, like a lot of our players, and those that know him, really admire him and respect him. I think everyone got to see the other side of him, which I think was great for him. Not the way you want it to go down, but I do think there was a silver lining out of the entire thing.
What jumped out about your team by the end of the year in 2021 when you guys won the World Series was the depth of the roster. So in spring training, I remember talking to Walt, and he talked about how much he enjoyed having Mauricio Dubon and Mikey Stremski around, and this is before you guys signed Dom Smith. Man, the depth in your roster has really played out this year.
No, it has. And look, it plays out when guys get hurt or guys aren't playing well. And, I talk a lot about when I left the Blue Jays after 2015 and went to work for the Dodgers for 2 years. I got to work with Andrew Friedman and Farhan Zaidi really closely. And even though I'd done the job for 6 years as a GM, I felt like I learned a lot. And they just hammered depth. You know, it was just something that they're 40 man. They were obsessive about it, right? It wasn't just a 25 at the time or 26. And it was just being deep, deep, deep. And look, we've tried to do that. But we've had a lot of durable players on the position player side. And we really haven't put a whole lot of money into our bench in years past. And look, the last 2 years, 24, 25, we just had so many guys get hurt. And the depth, like you said, really became critical for us. So that was definitely a focus. Like you talk about guys like Dubon, who could play all over the place. You know, you look at teams like LA, they had Kike Hernandez for years doing that infield, outfield. Tommy Edman was a great acquisition for
Miguel
them.
Rojas hitting
Miguel
a game-tying
Rojas,
home
yeah.
run.
Yeah, and even back to Andrew's days with Tampa, Ben Zobrist and so on. You know, I feel like, but it's valuable. It helps the manager, a ton, knowing you can move guys around. So there's no doubt we wouldn't be having the success we've had in the first 5-6 weeks or so without that depth.
All right, before you go, you're a great storyteller. Tell me about the trade that you made to get David Price when you were the general manager of the Toronto Blue Jays and how that came together, because it's one of the great stories, I think, trade stories in the last decade.
We weren't planning on David Price being available, but we weren't just going to force a deal for starters that we didn't think were the best fit for us. So once Dave Dombrowski on the Monday called, I think they had a tough series over the weekend. Deadline was on Friday. And he said, look, I'm going to open it up and Price is going to get moved. I was like, all right, this is a true one starter. The makeup we had was great. Clubhouse-wise was great. And knowing Dave, I know I hate the fact that we're both in the NL East because I can never make trades with him or even talk trade anymore. But he's great to deal with. He's very direct. You know, he's great to deal with from that standpoint. So I know the way Dave works, and you got to be straight and honest, and he'll give you that same respect back. And I told him, everyone's in play. We had just made the Troy Tulowitzki deal earlier, so Hoffman was gone. But this is a deal where guys like Norris and Matt Boyd would be in play. So I think Dave, knowing that I think we were one of the few teams that didn't say, oh, these 2 guys are off the table or these 3 guys are off the table. They're all in play. We're serious. We want to get this done. He got back to me late one night, and we were going back and forth, and I'd already been home. I was about 20 minutes from the ballpark, so it must have been 12 o'clock at night. I drove back to the office, and I went back and forth with him probably till 2 or 3 in the morning. I feel like it was that late. But I needed to get sign-off from, at the time, Paul Beeston, our CEO. He represented ownership at that level. Even though I had the dollars set aside, I still needed to get sign-off. So I told him, I said, look, we need to wait until the morning till I can get a hold of Paul just to sign up. And I said, we're good from a baseball operations standpoint and move forward with this deal. So I'm wired. I can't sleep. Anyone that's been in this chair, any sports chair, when you have a trade going, you're anxious. You're killing time, and it feels like forever. So my wife and kids had gone back to Portugal for the summer. She's from there. So I was by myself, and I couldn't go to sleep. So I drove up to a Portuguese bakery. We used to go up to about an hour outside the city north, and I was waiting to call Paul Beeston about 6 a.m. So bakery opens at 5. So I end up going up there. I'm sitting there. I'm having a coffee. I'm waiting. I'm trying to kill time. I call him at 6. I get a hold of him. He signs off on the deal. Probably wait till call Dave 7:30 in the morning. Tell him that we're good. Now we're in the process of exchanging files, the medicals and so on. Daniel Norris had some things he was going through, but he was going to be fine, and he was fine. But I knew that would take some time. So from the time we agreed and our trainers got together and the staff, now it's 3-4 hours, and it was a long wait because I really wanted the deal to go through. So I couldn't stand to be in the office. There's a beach about a few miles away from the ballpark. So I drove out to the beach. I think it's called Cherry Beach. I drove out to the beach, and I basically walked the beach up and down, just kind of waiting. I didn't want anyone to know what was going on. Obviously, our staff knew and Paul knew, but in the office and so on. So I just waited and waited. And probably around 11:30 a.m., Dave says, we're good to go. News breaks. Jose Batista sends me a text and said, is it true? And I think I just wrote back C or something in Spanish, you know? And guys were really excited, and he was great. And I think he went 9-1. I think he beat the Yankees a ton. We won the division by 6 games. I mean, he was really the impact of winning the AL East for us. So he was great. And, and it was just so exciting. His first start in Toronto was just incredible. And just it was against the Twins, the fan base, and so on. And look, we had talked about potentially signing him back, and I remember telling our staff, we want to make Toronto look great. And I had heard that David Price loved the popcorn at the Rogers Center. And I used to see him with the Rays eating popcorn on the bench and so on. So I said, when he shows up, I want a huge bag of popcorn in his locker. So he's sitting there just to kind of set the tone, And he loved it. I mean, he loved Toronto. It was a short period, but I think that was the first time people start to realize and appreciate prior to the World Series years. It had been a while. What a great city it was. What a great fan base it was. And that summer, the last 2 months into the postseason I still remember it well. I get the chills when I talk about it. Probably one of the most enjoyable experiences, other than winning the World Series here in Atlanta. That's right there is the next great experience from my career.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And I love the fact that you waited until 6 because you don't want to wake up your boss. That's very respectful.
I gotta
and
get him
Dave
to say yes.
Dombrowski.
I gotta get him to say yes.
Exactly. All right, Alex. Hey, thanks for taking the time. This is super fun.
Okay. All right, guys. See ya.
Sarah Langs, reporter-producer for MLB.com, joins us every week to play the numbers game. This week, I'm going to present her numbers. Number one, the game between the Angels and White Sox Wednesday was the first time in at least the last 70 seasons where 3 batters were hit by pitches with the bases loaded. Note number 2 from Sarah. The Dodgers were the first team to score its first 3 runs of a game, all via wild pitches, since the Phillies on August 14th, 1969 against the Braves. In that game, Phil Niekro, knuckleballer, was the starter for the Atlanta Braves. Number 3, Shohei Ohtani's ERA in his first 20 starts with the Dodgers, 2.04. That's the 3rd lowest ERA for any Dodger pitcher in his first 20 starts with the team since the ERA became an official stat in 1912. Rich Eisen is the host of the Rich Eisen Show, and he joins us now, a big-time Yankee fan. How you doing, Rich?
I am. Yes, can confirm all of what you just said, all of the above, Buster. It's good to see you, brother.
Good to see you, too, and thanks for doing this. I want to ask you about John Sterling. You, as a Yankee fan, I'm sure you, and especially your presence in the broadcast industry, you probably have some stories.
I mean, I just remember, meeting him for the first time, probably in, I imagine, 1998, which was the first World Series I covered for ESPN Radio at the site. And the Yankees were in the midst of their 125-50 season. And I had been, obviously growing up in New York City and, began to listen to John Sterling when he took over the microphone in the early aughts in the early 90s. And so getting to meet him was just a blast. And I'll never forget, he was just in this Natalie clad, man in a double-breasted sport coat with his pocket square peeking out perfectly. And he couldn't have been more gentlemanly. And my wife, Susie, was working for ESPN at the time and then started covering the World Series for her Fox outlet here on the West Coast. And she got to meet John, and he couldn't have been more great with her. Just a total pro's pro, and is synonymous with the Yankee run of the late 90s and early aughts, as well as obviously his over 5,000 straight broadcasts called that he became what every broadcaster wants to be known for, which is excellence, and certainly as a baseball play-by-play man, synonymous with the team, and a companion, as somebody who would just talk to you through the radio. He was awesome. And, Susie played for me a voicemail message that he left her just a couple of years ago after he retired, and she called him, and he calls her back, and he starts talking. He's sang her name, Susie Schuster, into the voicemail, and basically said, I consider you a friend, and I hope you call me back, and we just laughed about that. He's just, he was a human, and I'm sure, had his flaws just like everyone else. And a lot of fans, I'm sure, thought his His home run calls for the Yankees were over the top, but he was just awesome, and I will miss him. I already do.
Yeah, I texted with Michael Kay right after I heard the news, and he texted back. He loved his life, and I always felt like this came through in his calls. I was telling the story the other day about how I remember, turning on the radio, and my son, who's 10 to 11 years old, was listening with me, and John hadn't given a score update, and I said, "The Yankees are losing." And he looked at me and said, "How do you know that?" And I said, "I can tell." Because John gets disappointed, and you can hear the disappointment and the excitement and the happiness and the anger. I always felt like, in some respects, that he would speak for George Steinbrenner. Like, you could feel his frustration when the team didn't play well, and that's what I would tell friends who would talk about him as if it was all shtick. And I said, "No, if you listen to him, he will tell you exactly what's gone wrong for the team on a given day. And he will tell you what's great about the other team." He was dead honest along those lines.
Yeah, the most successful broadcasters I've ever come across are uniquely themselves, that there's no airs, that there's no fakeness, that the person that you're hearing or watching is exactly the same person once the broadcast ends. And John was exactly that. He was himself, and it came through. It really did.
How did you become a Yankees fan?
1976. My brother was a Met-Jet fan, because growing up in New York City, Staten Island, New York, you basically rooted for the same teams that played in the same stadium: Jets, Mets, and Shea, Yankees, Giants in Yankee Stadium. And obviously the Giants and Jets wound up playing together in their own stadium in New Jersey. But in the late 60s, early 70s, I was growing up in the early 70s. I was 7 years old. And even at that early age, I realized that following my brother through both the Jets and the Mets would lead me to be in a ball of tears, in a fetal position. And I realized the Mets were terrible, and the Yankees had a team to start watching. And that was the year that Chris Chambliss hit that walk-off home run against the Royals in the ALCS. They got swept by the Big Red Machine in the World Series, and I was hooked. And then obviously Reggie Jackson shows up the next year, and that's all she wrote. I've been a Yankee fan ever since. So I was that rare Yankee Jet fan growing up in Staten Island. But the Yankees and the Michigan Wolverines, my alma mater, Michigan football, Michigan basketball, and New York Yankees baseball are the only entities that caused me to emotionally swing. That I've been fortunate to do what I do for a living for a long time, and the no cheering in the press box has kind of taken over most of my sports watching. But the Yankees emotionally affect me. Winning or losing really does affect me. 162 games during the regular season, and if they're fortunate to make the playoffs, that too. So I've been hooked since 1976.
And I can remember meeting you in the press box at Legends Field. That's what it was called then, down in Tampa, in Yankee spring training. That was the first time I met you. And feeling that, that excitement. Who was your player? Who was your player? And tell me about the first time you got to meet that player, because that's one of the cool things for you and I.
Well, my favorite Yankee when I first started following the team was Thurman Munson. And I do remember when in summer camp in Camp Loconda, where word filtered in August of 1978 that he had, or 79, that he had died in a plane crash. But Reggie Jackson was my guy. I mean, growing up, and then Mattingly became my guy as well. And I've gotten to meet Reggie Jackson throughout the years. He's been a guest on this show. Mr. October is a diehard Steelers fan as well. So I'll get texts from him during NFL Game Day morning on NFL Network on Sunday mornings, talking about what's going on with his Steelers, and say hi to Kurt Warner, stuff like that. And that's amazing. I'll tell you my favorite Mattingly story, getting to meet him for the first time. My guys here in the studio are probably all rolling their eyes because they've heard this story about 50 times. We're like an old marriage here. But I was a freshman at the University of Michigan, and the Yankees were coming through early in April of 1986, or 87 probably. And so the Yankees were coming through, and this is when Steinbrenner was telling Mattingly to cut his hair. Mattingly had that mullet, if you remember.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Don was in his walk year. And I was, 1,000% convinced that Steinbrenner was going to screw this thing up. So I was going to take matters in my own hands. I borrowed a car from somebody in my dorm, and I drove to Tiger Stadium, and I got there with the gates locked. I was going to be the first person inside the stadium, and I was going to go right up to the dugout, and I would tell Mattingly, as I was rehearsing my speech on the drive down, Don, you mean so much to all of us. You are the future. You are the guy who's going to bring us to the promised land. Do not listen to George Steinbrenner. He does not speak for the fans. I had this whole thing worked out. And you bet, I was literally the first person inside of Tiger Stadium, the old Tiger Stadium that day, and literally the first fan belly up to the visiting dugouts railing. And I stood there, and the first person out of the dugout was Don Mattingly. Out of the clubhouse into the dugout was Don Mattingly, and we locked eyes, and all I was saying, Donnie Baseball, woo! Like that. And he got wide-eyed, pirouetted, and went the other way. And that's the first time I ever met Don Mattingly until I worked at ESPN, and I covered the celebrity softball game at the All-Star game in Seattle. Which year was that? I think it was 02 maybe. I don't know.
It would have been 01. Yeah,
01,
Cal
okay.
Ripken game when they moved to third base. Or shortstop.
And what, Channel Park threw him a cookie.
Right.
And so, but I'm working for ESPN. I've been on the air for about 5-6 years, and I'm covering the celebrity softball game, and one of the managers is Don Mattingly. Okay, for the celebrity. Okay, and so I run into him in the visitors clubhouse, and he comes up to me, and he's like, "I love you on SportsCenter, Rich. I watch you and Stuart Scott all the time," and my head's spinning because this is my guy. As a matter of fact, you should know my daughter, my last born, her middle name is Mattingly. Interestingly enough, her first name's Taylor, which is his son's name. I think he would think that's really weird. But long story short, I said to him, this means so much to me. And he says, "Nice to meet you." And I'm like, "Well, Don, we have met before." And then I told him the story at Tiger Stadium, and I creeped him out again. A second time, years later, I wound up.
No, you didn't. He had a laugh about it.
I don't know. But he is truly my favorite Yankee. And the fact that he retired, Tino takes over first, and that's when they start going on the magical run that I had always envisioned and hoped for him to go on a ride with him. It's truly one of my biggest baseball fan regrets, being a Yankee fan. Not that Tino, Tino obviously was great, and he had his big moments, and the 01 World Series, clearly. One of them leaps out there, but, Mattingly should have gotten a lot of those rings too.
Okay, the next time you're on, I'm going to ask you about the interviews you do with actors, but I'm running out of time. I got one last for you.
I'm sorry I prattled on with that story.
No. I love that story, and I've got a Reggie Jackson story that is along the same lines, and we'll talk about that another time. Fill in the blank. The 2026 Yankees are the best Yankees team since. Because I think they're pretty damn good. I think they're a real threat to the Dodgers.
I think that, well, listen, if the pitching stays healthy, right? I mean, if Rodon is apparently right around the corner.
Yep.
Cole is around the corner of the corner.
A month, yeah.
Right? And if those guys come back healthy and are the pitchers that they have been, then Fried, I don't even know how Aaron Boone would order them, but in no particular order, Fried, Schlittler, Cole, Rodon, and Will Warren, I'd imagine, would be the fifth starter, because I do believe he has earned it. And that's way better than any Yankee rotation I could recall. And I would even put the 2009 championship team underneath this 2026 team. Now, obviously, I'm talking to you in the middle of a second long winning streak of the last 3 weeks for the Yankees and what they are doing and how they are playing. And the thing that I'm really enjoying about them is they they're moving runners over. They're not striking out as much. There are productive outs that I'm seeing. And this is a team that doesn't really have a leadoff hitter of note. I turn to my son, my 15-year-old son, Cooper, is my watching buddy for the Yankees. And I'm like, could you imagine if the Yankees had somebody like, say, Stephen Kwan leading off, somebody who's always getting on base? You know, and I know they have a 30 home run hitter from last year in Trent Grisham leading off more than not. But he's not a leadoff hitter. He doesn't really get on base as much. Like if they had somebody, a frequent duck on the pond for Judge and Ben Rice, who's providing through the first 5 weeks of the season Soto-like numbers, and then you have Bellinger, who's on fire right now, followed by hopefully a healthy Giancarlo Stanton, and then so on and so forth. Caballero's been so good that they're not even twitching in the direction of Anthony Volpe coming back from an injury in the minor leagues right now. This is the best team since the Torre years. But you and I are talking in the first week of May, and it's a long season. There's injuries and things of that nature. I do know Bednar's numbers are up there. I heard Michael Kay on the broadcast on Yes, which is the soundtrack of my household out here in Southern California, late afternoons to the early evenings, because that is when first pitch of East Coast baseball play happens out here in Los Angeles. He did say that Bednar's numbers are surpassed since he's been with the Yankees only by Mason Miller, which kind of surprised me because Bednar puts a few too many ducks on the pond for my liking. But then again, you know, Mariano Rivera ruined all other closers for the Yankees and their fan base forevermore. So I do feel like they might have to hit the back end of the bullpen or get some more bullpen arms, just like the rest of Major League Baseball. But I do feel more confident if they do, and they are so fortunate enough to face the Dodgers again in the World Series. And plus, you know, Aaron Boone won't go to the wrong left-hander out of the bullpen in Game 1 this time around because, you know, he's no longer on the Yankees. I'm not even mentioning his name because that was such a terrible moment for me to actually personally witness with my son, as I did a couple of World Series ago.
Well, I suspect.
How's that for your answer? Would you agree?
Excellent.
Would you agree? No, in all honesty,
you.
Buster, you're the expert. I'm just sitting at home with a remote in my hand watching this stuff. So
yeah, so during the wintertime when I would do shows, I would say, because I have a lot of friends who are Yankee fans,
right.
and I've said to them, why are you guys whining about not doing anything? Do you understand how good this team is going to be? Like the depth and the development of Schlittler and Rice in particular has taken the team up to a different level. And knowing Brian Cashman, you know, for a lot of years and sort of how he works the trade deadline. First off, he reflexively is aggressive at the trade deadline. And especially when he thinks his team has a chance to win, that's when he's going to double down. So whatever you're seeing right now, if there are holes, he will work to fill them at the trade deadline. That's his history. There have been times when he holds back the ammunition, when he doesn't feel like necessarily that they have a great chance. But this year, it's pretty clear they have a great chance.
Well, I mean, it does seem to be, you know, cascading into the minor leagues as well with the prospects that they have. You know, obviously Spencer Jones and George Lombard sitting there. Volpe, with all of his experiences in AAA. Oswaldo Cabrera is back healthy, and he's raking right now. So the Martian came up, and he's now hitting from both sides of the plate in his first few weeks. Everything does seem to be cresting to the point where, you know, I'm a bit concerned that there's going to be a trapdoor coming. But end of the day, I'm just really enjoying watching this team. It has been a pleasure to watch them. And I feel like they really do have a chance, even if they face the Dodgers at some point. And we'll see. I don't know. There always seems to be these players the Yankees just can't get out, like ever. And, you know, Altuve's one, and Devers when he was with the Red Sox is another. Pete Alonso hit home runs this weekend. Even though the Orioles got swept. You know, Bregman, the Yankees just for some reason can't get these guys out or have a pitching plan against them. And Freddie Freeman appears to be one of them. Mookie Betts has been one of them for a long time. Ohtani is just a unicorn. He's a freak. And the Dodgers have almost the same record as the Yankees, and they're not playing with Betts or Snell or Edwin Diaz right now. So again, let's just put a pin in this and check back with each other whenever you want, Buster. But this
Okay.
it's been a great first 5-6 weeks for the Yankees. Awesome. I love turning them on. I love watching them. I love and in the past, even when they have been winning, it's just walk, strike out, pass ball, they get a run. This time around, I mean, it's not like last year's Blue Jays where they're rallying all the time with single, double, but you're seeing a bat put on the ball more. And Judge hasn't even gotten started hitting for average yet. I think he has right now. It's been awesome. It's been great.
Well, we'll definitely have you back on and do an
Anytime.
assessment again after the deadline. Rich, thanks for doing this.
You got it. We'll chat soon.
Todd Radom is the chief executive of our weekly quiz. He's a graphic artist whose work can be seen on ball fields all across America, all around the world, or you can go to his website, toddradom.com. Todd, how you doing?
Buster, what's going on? It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. You and I were kicking back and forth ideas for this week, and I want to ask you about bobbleheads. Give me your 3 favorite bobblehead events on the docket in Major League Baseball.
So, Buster, I looked at, there are a bunch of great ones, but to narrow it down to 3, I've got 3 really, really good ones. In no particular order, the Las Vegas Athletics of Sacramento are giving away a Nick Kurtz bobblehead in which he is depicted with a butter churning butter. And now I'm thinking of Weird Al Yankovic and Amish Paradise. But that's a really good one because it's such a great nickname, right? Big Amish.
I would love to know what his reaction was when they brought the idea to him. They're not going to do it unless he signs off on it, but that is a great one.
Yeah. And again, if you've got something like that, just run with it and embrace it. But I like the originality of it. Another one that I particularly enjoy is the Blue Jays depiction of a very young Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in an Expos jersey, tipping his cap to the sky, his little batting helmet, like he was going to be a star. And of course, now he is. But I love this for several reasons. Number one, it keeps the spirit of the Expos and all that history alive. Number two, it's such a great image, right? The photographer who captured this image, to see this live on and depicted in 3D form, it's just terrific, and it just makes you smile, right?
Oh, it's a great picture, and it's a great bobblehead. I saw that one, and you're like, wow, that's really neat, especially knowing that he was born in Canada. Someone who he's talked about his Montreal Expos roots in the past.
Yeah, no question. And then number 3, I've got to give kudos to my guy Ice Cube. The Dodgers, and I believe this is next week, are giving away a Cube bobblehead for the 2nd year in a row. But this year's depicts Cube with a giant smile on his face, sitting in the blue lowrider convertible, carrying the back-to-back World Series Commissioners Championship trophies to home plate. And I just love everything about it. He's such a fan. I talked to him about this, Buster, a couple of months ago, and he shot a promo on the field at Dodger Stadium. Freddie Freeman was involved. I said, "You look like you were just having the time of his life." He's like, "Are you kidding me? It's like a childhood dream come true, making believe you hit a home run at Dodger Stadium to win a game." And so I just love everything about this.
Man, they're going to be lined up outside of Dodger Stadium for that one, right?
Yeah.
You sent me a picture of it. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to this week's quiz.
Heading into the 2026 season, according to Baseball Reference, this is the Colorado Rockies' cumulative earned run average since they joined the National League in 1993's A, 5.05, B, 5.52, C, 4.78, or D, 4.35.
My choice is between A or C, and I'll go with A.
Buster, you're on fire. 5.05 cumulative earned run average going into the season up in the mountains and on the road. So I think you're just lucky today.
I know your brain well enough to know that what jumped out to you was that ERA started with the number 5. And that's part of what interested you about this. Yes? Because that is, for any baseball fan, you got an ERA of 5.
I mean,
not good, even if you're at
4.78
elevation.
for the last 30 some odd years. It's pretty impressive too. But Yeah, 5 was a headline number for sure. That is not something you normally see.
All right, Todd, thanks for doing this.
Guys, thanks.
All right, so let's get over to Bleacher Tweets here. We got one coming from Brian. Mike Trout put on an absolute show in New York City a little while ago, and it got me wondering, could any of these East Coast major market teams take a flyer on Trout? It seems to me that the baseball gods should make Mike Trout relevant for at least one postseason run, right?
Yeah, and I talked to Trout on Sunday, and he was telling me how after each of those games in New York, he and Aaron Judge were texting each other, going back and forth. And they were talking, they were just sort of cajoling each other, good-natured competitiveness between the two of them. I mean, he's having so much fun, thriving for the first time in 5 years because he feels so good physically. And yeah, a lot of people are wondering, okay, with the Angels off to a bad start again, would they trade him? I have talked to a number of general managers who, of course, I'm sure at some point have raised this with the Angels, and I'm told there's no chance it gets traded. Artie Moreno, the Angels owner, is not going to give away a legacy player while eating a lot of Trout's salary, which he probably would have to do since Trout's owed about $36 million a year. Mike Trout is to the Angels what Cal Ripken was to the Orioles. He's going to make a Hall of Fame speech someday, and they're going to want an Angels cap on that plaque. And so I seriously doubt that he would ever get moved.
It would be nice to see the Angels make a run while he's there. So we'll see if that happens.
Yeah. As he said on the podcast, when we had him on at the end of March, he just he said that's why he wants to play. And it would be fun because he's certainly one of those players who always responds on the big stage. All right. That's it for Bleacher Tweets. Kenny, thanks for filling in for Taylor again.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here.
All right. And my thanks also to Sarah Langs, to Todd Radom, Rich Eisen. Love that Don Mattingly story. I'm going to ask Don about it later. And Alex Anthopoulos, the head of the Atlanta Braves baseball operation.